Hey guys, what's up? So in this video we'll be seeing how to create a simple HTTP server using C#. So in this part we'll be diving right into the coding. So let's get started. So I have the Visual Studio opened up. So I'll be creating a new project. I'll choose Windows form application using C#. So I'll just name it as simple HTTP server. That's it. Now I create one. So it's creating a new project. So first of all we need some UI elements for displaying the logs and all. So let's get started with the form itself. I'll change the form title to then go to the toolbox. We need two buttons. One is for starting and another one is for stopping the server. So we search for buttons, then we create one, then we also create another one. So now you have two buttons over here. Then I want a text box, actually two. One is for displaying the logs and one is for displaying the port number. That is the port number. If the user want to specify the port number, I'll be using that. Now I need a label, actually two of those. So now I have all the ones that I required, so I'll just arrange one by one. So now in the properties of this text box, that will be converted as the server log. So it should be a multi-line text. So in the above given property, just click here and make it multi-line. Just check this, so it will be resizable. Now go to the label properties, change the label text to server logs. And if you want, just increase the font size to 10. That's it. Properties again for this text box and change its name to server logs text. Then go to the properties of the another text box which will be used for the server port. It's just for the sake of display. So server port, and I can change its text size to 10 as well. And for this text also I will change it to 10, and I will make it read only because the logs is shown and it should be scrollable. So I'll go to the scroll bars and enable both. So you can make it read only so that people cannot edit it. Actually it makes sense. It can be selected, copied and even read, but it cannot be edited. It shouldn't be edited, right? And now go to the button properties, then make the text size to 11. No, I guess 10 would be fine. Then this one also I'll make it 10 as well, so that the font is much more visible and good looking. So I will just increase the height of the buttons, keep it identical, so place one over the other, increase its width as well. Also change the font size for this text as well. It's all up to you. You can just skip this part and just get right into the coding. Understand these are the things which are present within the UI. Change the text of the button 1 to start server. Then name of this button should be changed to start server btn. Now we need to change this text to stop server and name the button as stop server btn. Now we can get started with the coding part. For the first thing we require is an on listener for these two buttons. You can just create it by double clicking here. Okay, so I'll create one for the start and one for the stop. So now you have these. I need to use using system.net and using system.net dot sockets. And also we require a thread because listening to an incoming connection is actually a blocking task using system.threading. So now we can declare the things private socket HTTP server, which will be our server socket. I'm not initializing it anyway. Private int server port, which will be by default given a value of 80, and later on we will be taking the value from this text box. Now one more thing, that is thread. I'll just keep it as thread. Now the thing is that I want this button to be disabled when the form comes up. Just double click on the form anywhere, it will be taking you to a method, form load method. This method will be invoked whenever the form comes up. Stop server button dot enabled equals false. Now we need two more methods. One is private void connection thread method, and also one more method, void start listening for connections. So this will be the core part which will be listening to all the inbound connection. That will be a infinite loop. I'll be implementing it, but before that we need to start with the start button part. Whenever we start the server, first of all I need to make a log. That can be done by server log text dot text equals empty, and then I will make server log text dot text equals server started. Okay, between this we'll be implementing the logic for starting the server. So first of all we need to do a try catch. Once an exception occurs, I will just log into the console. Error while starting the server. Okay, I can just log it to the text also. Server log text dot text equals server starting failed. Just give a new line here. Now I will initialize my HTTP server socket. That can be done with new socket, socket type, stream, and protocol type. Protocol type will be of TCP because it's a TCP socket. Now we want to do is separate try catch. Okay, catch exception. It's up to you, so you can give it anyway. You want server port is equal to int dot parse from the value that is given in the text box, that is the server port text dot toString. Now if the parsing actually fails, keep it to the default port 80 and just log it to the server logs. I can just copy this line to start on specified port. And also we need to add one more check. If the server port value is greater than or server port value less than or equals 0, then we give an exception, give it a message like, so actually I missed the throw keyword. Now all I need to do is I'll just have to start up the thread for it. So I have created a thread earlier. Now I'll be initializing it, new thread start, which will be taking in a method. This is this dot connection thread method that I had created. Now I need to start the thread dot start. So once I start it, I just need to disable and enable button. Start server button dot enabled equals false. Stop server button dot enabled equals true. Okay, that's perfect. Inside here, what are we going to do? We need to create an endpoint. So how are we going to do that? Go give a try catch exception ex, then inside here just console dot write line, then specify I could not start. So here we want few things, that is the IP endpoint, which will be the endpoint to which the server will be listening. That is the actual socket, and the IP address to which it will be listening. New IP endpoint, which will be taking in two parameters. One is the IP address itself, because a host machine, that is a server machine which runs the server process, can have multiple IP addresses. For example, it may have multiple network interfaces, so it may have multiple IP addresses. So if you are specifying it as 127.0.0.1, it will be only listening to those requests that comes at that IP, only listens to a connection that is coming through that IP. For me, it should listen to all, so I'll give it an IP address dot any. Then I can specify the server port. So once we have created it, we'll be binding the server to it. We can use the bind method, then specify the endpoint. It's actually the size of the list to a number of connections that to which we need to listen. For time being, I'll keep it as 1. So that's it. Now once this is done, start listening for connections. That is, we'll be calling this method. So here I'm not going to serve any page. If they are making a request, I won't be caring about that part. Whatever they request, I'll be just responding with a static HTML page for the simplicity. And after that, once we are done with it, we'll be implementing in the next part of the tutorial. We implement how to fetch the file and send back the file for which they have requested. So it's a bit more complicated. It's not because of the procedure. I'm trying to keep this tutorial as simple as possible. So I'm just, that's all the thing. It's not about the working of HTTP server, right? So the basic HTTP server need to respond with some basic HTML data, or that's what we are going to do with this part, and we'll be implementing it in more detail in the next part. For the time being, it will be responding with a page which says the server time is so and so. So we need to get the date and time of the server. I'll give it a time name. So use the date time and then use date time dot now. Then you need to create a string in which we'll be having the data which we have received from the client. So I need to create a byte array. So I'll name it as bytes, and now I'll give it a size 2048. Okay. Now I'll keep reading till I get a new line, that is /r/n, which indicates the end of the request. So int num bytes equals, I missed one thing. So whenever I'm listening to something, right, I need to get the client, right? So which will be also a socket, which I can get it from the HTTP server socket.accept method. This is actually the blocking statement. Blocking statement means some of them might have thought, why are we running it inside the thread rather than running inside the start button itself. The thing is that this one is a blocking instruction. If you see the flow, once we are running the thread, if we are not using the thread, we will be calling this method directly here. The control goes to this method. It does all these things. If everything works fine and the binding happens successfully, it moves on to this method. Here it reaches this method called accept. Okay, so what happens is that it will not execute anything below this until a request comes in from the browser, or the client makes a request. Till it makes a request, the server will be stuck at this accept method. What happens is that it will hang up the button on click event. That is, the button will get clicked, but it will not complete its on click method. That means you are going into a non-responsive state and your app will be in a not responding position. Oh, that's why I am running inside a thread. So now I accepted the connection. Okay, now I am ready to read it. Client dot receive, which takes the bytes, that's the array. So it will be receiving the data, and now we need to convert the bytes into string, because we know ultimately it sends the request as a string. So what's it? How to do it? Encoding dot ASCII dot get string, then specify the bytes, that is bytes, then specify the starting index, that is 0, and then the count, that is number of bytes. Okay, now you have encoded it. The only thing you need to check is if data dot index of, if you find it /r/n, that indicates the end of the request header, end of the request header. If it is found in the data, we can just break out of the loop. That is done. So this is actually reading the inbound connection data. Once we reach here after breaking, read the data, so we can type it as data read. So now we have the data, we can log it into the server logs. So server logs is a text and it's a UI element. You cannot access the UI element from another thread rather than only from the UI thread. So how do we do that? Actually, it's pretty simple. Server logs.text.invoke, we can specify a delegate here, which is a delegate, it's a method invoker. You need to cast it to method invoker. Then you can specify the things here like server. Now this one actually runs inside the UI thread, so you can now make modifications to your .text. We can set the text to the data. So first of all, before setting the text to anything, you need to give a /r/n, so it will always come in new line. I'll give it twice. Then I have to print the data to the user, which is plus equal to the data. Then I will just server logs.text plus equals You can give it a slash slash n and then give it as end of request. You can give it anything you want. Okay, that's something I'll be putting in the logs. Now I need to send back the response. So we have a string res header. Okay, I'll define it now, and before that I will give a res body, and then we have the actual response string, which is the combination of res header plus res body. Then we need to convert it to bytes so that we can send it over the socket. So byte res data equals encoding dot ascii dot get bytes. Then you can specify the response string, which will be converted to byte. Now we have to send it to the client. Use the client socket, then use send or the send to method. Send to method takes in two arguments. One is the byte array, that is stress data. Now for the second parameter, it takes an endpoint. You can get it from the client itself. Just use client dot remote endpoint. Okay, that's it. We have sent back the data. Now we need to close it. So then only the browser will render the content to the user. So we use client dot. Okay, so now we have closed it. So we need to specify the content of the header, right? So first we specify the protocol, then the version of the protocol, then the status, then a message that is everything is fine. Okay, now we need to give a new line, server, that is server name. You can specify it as my C# server. You can give it anything. Now another new line, actually it will be in 3 lines. The content type, which will be text/html in our case for the time being, and which will be having a char set utf8. Thing is that we have the response header and the response body. The response body is the part that gets rendered to the HTML, and the response header will be processed by the browser or the client for getting more information about the response, like the content type. These three are mandatory. You can have other types like content disposition and the other file types as well, depending on the file that we are sending back as the response body. For the time being, as I said, it's a static page that I'm planning to display, so we'll keep it as such. How does it distinguish between the header and the body? Actually, there should be a boundary, right? So it's actually two new line characters. That here you can see the first part, then a new line, then the second part, then a new line, then the third part. So when the header ends, it actually ends with a two new line characters. So you specify that that's the end of the header. Now you can just specify your body. I'll start with doc type HTML. Then I can create a tag HTML. I can close it as well, head, and I will name it as head as well. And now I need the title. I'll give it as title, and I will use my server, and I will close the title. I will give it a body, and I will close the body tag, and h4 here. I will close that h4 as well. Now I will specify server time is okay. Then I need to specify the server time. I'll bring down the head, then I'll bring down the body, actual content of the body, and then this one. So I'll give a plus plus here, and then I'll close it, and I will close this one as well, and I will specify the time dot toString. Now our body is ready. So we have the new lines to things to separate it and all. We are reading the data, and then we are printing the data in the log, and then we are sending back the response, and then we are closing it. I think that's what. And now we have one thing left. Just copy this part. So now the only thing that is left off is to implement the stop button, which will stop our server. Let's start with the try catch. Stopping failed. Now the first thing we want to do is to close the socket. So that can be done by HTTP server, which is our socket, and call the close method on it. Okay. Now the next one, kill the thread. That can be done by thread dot calling the abort method on it. Paste the thing that we copied from the above. We need to disable and enable the button. Just change the false to true and true to false, because we want the start button to be enabled and the stop button must be disabled. That's all. Now let's run the project. Now we have the server up and running. Now I will open up the browser. So once I have the browser, I will start the server. I haven't mentioned any ports here. By default, it will be taking the port 80. Okay, so once I start the server, then I go to browser and type in localhost. You can see that the request has already come, because it's actually just making a call ahead so that it will load much smoother. That's all. So you can see that there are two requests. One is for the main index page and another one is for a favorite icon. Actually, you can just verify that by going to the inspect and then going to the network. You can just refresh it again. You can see two requests. Favorite icon is nothing but the icon over here. So it's taking it from the cache now. That's a WAM's icon. I used to run WAM before. So this is the one that browser makes by default, so you don't have to worry about it. So in this case, you can see actually it is a slash request, which is for the local host, that is the index or the landing page, and then another one is for the favorite icon. Even if you now just give hello.html, it will be still showing the time, but you can see that over here you would have got a request requesting for a slash hello.html. So in the next part, what we'll be doing is we'll be using this one, that is the first line of the request, and we will extract the path mentioned in the request, and then we will fetch the corresponding file and send back the contents of the file instead of the static content. So here if you do a refresh, it's still giving you the static page, because we are not considering or processing the path now. Okay, now if I stop the server, you can just go over here and refresh. Now you can see the server has stopped, so the browser is saying the page is not found. Okay, so what to do is just start the server again and go to the browser. You can see the page coming up. If you want to run it on some other port, just give 9001, then stop the server, start the server again, then go over here, then mention that port 9001. So you can see that the request has come and it is serving the file on this port. Okay, if I do a refresh, you will be getting the server time. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we will be fetching the file according to the path we have received in the request. Then we will fetch the file content and then we will send back the file content as the response. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you in the next part. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.